It was a cold, gray morning when everything changed. A sanitation worker named Miguel was making his usual rounds through the back alleys of the city, just before the sun had fully risen. His boots splashed quietly through puddles left by the early rain, and the air smelled like damp concrete and rusted metal. He'd been on this route for years, seen all kinds of things people threw away. Broken furniture, old toys, leftover food. But that day, something unusual caught his eye near the edge of a dumpster behind an old bakery. A large, dented cardboard box sat slightly off-kilter, like someone had dropped it in a hurry. Miguel was about to toss it in with the rest of the trash when he heard it. Faint but unmistakable. Soft whimper. He froze. Carefully, he crouched down and peeled back the flaps of the box. What he saw made his heart skip a beat. Inside, curled up in the corner like he was trying to make himself invisible, was a small brown dog. His fur was matted and filthy, caked in patches of dried mud. One eye was swollen shut, and his ribs stuck out beneath his thin skin like they were about to burst through. His legs trembled as he tried to move, but it was like his body couldn't keep up with his spirit. Despite everything, he wagged his tail. Miguel blinked. For a second he thought he imagined it. But no. That weak, hopeful wag was real. "I've got you, buddy," he whispered, carefully reaching in. The dog flinched at first, but didn't growl. He just looked up at Miguel with eyes that seemed to ask, "Is it safe now?" Miguel gently lifted him out of the box. He was lighter than he should have been, so light it was hard to believe he was still alive. The dog let out a low whine but didn't resist. That quiet trust, even after whatever he'd been through, hit Miguel right in the chest. He wrapped the little guy in his jacket and placed him on the passenger seat of his truck. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to do something. The nearest animal clinic wasn't open yet, so Miguel drove aimlessly for a few minutes, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting gently on the dog's side, feeling the shallow rise and fall of his breathing. "Hang in there, okay?" he said softly, as if the dog could understand. When the clinic finally opened, Miguel rushed in with the bundle in his arms. The receptionist's eyes widened, and within seconds, a vet named Dr. Lena came out to meet him. Her face shifted from professional calm to genuine concern the moment she saw what Miguel was carrying. They didn't waste time asking questions. The dog was rushed into the back, and Miguel was left in the waiting area, heart pounding, jacket soaked, hands shaking. He sat there, staring at the empty space where the dog had been, wondering how someone could leave a living, breathing soul in a box like trash. An hour passed. Then two. Dr. Lena finally returned, wiping her hands on a towel. Her expression was serious, but not hopeless. "He's in rough shape," she said gently. "Multiple bruises, some older injuries that didn't heal right. He's severely malnourished, but he's a fighter." Miguel nodded slowly. "I could see that." He was still wagging his tail. That tail, worn and weak as it was, had said more than words ever could. Dr. Lena smiled faintly. "We're going to keep him overnight, start treatment. Do you want to leave your contact information?" Miguel hesitated. He didn't know why he felt so connected to this dog. Maybe it was the way he didn't give up, the way he still trusted, even after being thrown away. Or maybe it was because Miguel had once felt abandoned too, many years ago when he was just a boy arriving in a new country with nothing but a suitcase and a hopeful mother. He scribbled his number on a piece of paper. "Please, let me know how he's doing." That night Miguel couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the dog in the box again. He thought about the countless people who must have passed by without noticing. He thought about whoever had left him there and why. But mostly he thought about that tail. That tiny flicker of hope. The next morning the phone rang. "He made it through the night," Dr. Lena said. "He's still very weak, but he's alert now. He even ate a little." Miguel exhaled, not realizing he'd been holding his breath. That's great. There's more," she added. He doesn't have a microchip, no collar, no identification. We've checked local reports, but nothing matches. Miguel knew what she was really saying. If no one comes for him. He cleared his throat. Can I come see him? When he arrived, the little dog was lying on a soft blanket, wrapped up and warm, and 4 drip in his leg. His one good eye followed Miguel as he stepped into the room, and just like before, his tail moved. Just barely, but it moved. Miguel crouched down, careful not to startle him. Hey there, champ, he murmured. Remember me? The dog didn't bark, didn't whine. He just looked at Miguel with that same quiet hope. And just like that, something shifted. Miguel didn't know it yet, but that moment was the beginning of something bigger than either of them could imagine. A bond was forming, one that would change not only the dog's life, but Miguel's as well. But what neither of them knew was that the story wasn't over. Not even close. 'Cause someone out there did know the dog. Someone had seen him before. And the secrets behind that cardboard box, the reason he'd been left, the pain hidden in his past, were about to come to light in a way no one expected. And when they did, Miguel would be forced to make a choice that could change everything. Miguel couldn't get the dog's eyes out of his head. That single tired look held something deeper, like he'd seen too much for a creature who was barely hanging on. Miguel had named him Benny, a soft name for a dog who had known anything but softness. It just felt right, like giving him a new name could help him leave behind whatever darkness he'd crawled out of. Every day after work, Miguel visited Benny at the clinic. He brought blankets, small treats, even read to him once when Benny was too weak to sit up. Dr. Lena said the dog responded more when Miguel was around. He'd perk up, wag that stubborn little tail, and sometimes let out a breathy sound that might have been his version of a sigh. It was quiet comfort, but for both of them it mattered. Still, the question never left Miguel's mind. Who left him there? One evening, as he stood by Benny's kennel, Dr. Lena walked over holding a clipboard. You know, she said, lowering her voice. We had a woman call this morning asking if we'd found a brown dog recently. Sounded anxious, but when I asked for details, name, markings, anything, she froze up and hung up. Miguel straightened. Could have been someone just checking, right? Maybe, she said, not sounding convinced. But she called from a blocked number. That's not typical. Miguel's stomach tightened. What if Benny hadn't been a stray after all? What if someone did want him back, not out of love, but for reasons that had nothing to do with kindness? Later that night, Miguel sat on his couch staring at his phone. He'd started digging, posting Benny's photo in lost and found pet groups online, checking local forums, even printing flyers to post near the area where he found him. Most responses were the same. Poor guy. How could someone do this? Hope he finds a home. But one message stood out. It came from a user with no profile picture, no name, just a string of random numbers. The message was short. Where did you find him? Miguel hesitated. He didn't reply right away. Something about it felt off. He clicked on the profile. Nothing there. No posts, no photos. Just silence. The next day, he showed the message to Dr. Lena. She frowned. Be careful, Miguel. If someone's trying to find him, we need to make sure it's for the right reasons. You're his advocate now. And Miguel felt that deeply. Benny wasn't just a rescue case anymore. He was his responsibility. He'd already made that decision, even if he hadn't said it out loud. A few more days passed. Benny was walking now, slowly, with a limp in his back leg. He'd gained some weight, his eye was healing and his spirit, fragile as it was starting to shine through. He still flinched at sudden movements and ducked when someone raised a hand too fast, but he no longer looked like a shadow. One morning, Miguel brought in a small blue collar. What do you think, buddy? He said, kneeling beside him. Too early. Dr. Lena smiled from across the room. He's ready. If you're ready. Miguel fastened the collar gently around Benny's neck. The tag read, Benny, loved and safe. It was the first real step toward home. But the peace didn't last long. That night, someone knocked on Miguel's door. It was just past 10 p.m. and the neighborhood was quiet. Miguel peeked through the window. A woman stood alone under the porch light, arms wrapped around herself, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She didn't look dangerous, but there was something tense in the way she held herself. He opened the door slowly, leaving the screen closed. "Can I help you?" Her eyes flicked behind him into the house. "You're the man who found the dog. The one from the cardboard box." Miguel stiffened. "Who are you?" "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said quickly. I think that dog. His name isn't Benny." Miguel's heart pounded. "He's mine," she said quietly. "Or he was. His real name is Cooper." The name didn't sound right. Not for the dog he'd come to know. Miguel stepped outside, pulling the door halfway closed behind him. "If he was yours, why was he left in a box?" The woman's face twisted. "It wasn't supposed to be like that. Please let me explain. I didn't hurt him. I was trying to protect him." Miguel didn't know what to believe. He looked her over. She was wearing old jeans, a faded hoodie. Her hands trembled slightly. She continued, voice low. "My ex, he was hurting Cooper. I tried to leave, but I had nowhere to go. One night I ran with Cooper and hid him behind the bakery. I thought I'd come back for him, but something happened. Got caught. And when I got free, he was gone." Miguel said nothing. He wanted to believe her, but trust didn't come easy when you'd seen a dog broken like that. "Do you have proof?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, then pulled a worn phone from her pocket. She scrolled, then showed him a photo. There was Benny, thinner but recognizable, sitting on a patch of grass next to her. He had the same white patch on his chest, the same tilted ear. Miguel felt like the ground was shifting under him. "I'm not here to take him away," she added. I needed to know he was okay. That someone kind found him." Miguel looked at her closely. Her eyes were red, not just from crying, but like she hadn't slept in days. Still, something inside him told him there was more to the story. "I can't just hand him over," he said finally. "He's safe now. If you care about him, you'll understand that." She nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "I do. That's why I walked here. I couldn't sleep without knowing." Before Miguel could ask anything else, she turned and walked down the steps, disappearing into the night. No name, no number, just silence again. He stood on the porch long after she was gone. Back inside, Benny, Cooper, was curled on the couch, tail thumping weakly as Miguel returned. He looked up, almost like he knew something had changed. Miguel sat beside him and gently stroked his head. "Who are you really, buddy?" he whispered. "And what are you running from?" The questions hung heavy in the room. Because now there was more than just one mystery. There was a woman in hiding. A man who might have hurt them both. A name that didn't fit. And a dog who had survived too much to be forgotten. And deep down, Miguel knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The days that followed felt heavier. Miguel went through the motions, work, errands, checking on Benny, but his thoughts kept circling back to that woman on the porch. Her face, her voice, the way she spoke his dog's name like it carried weight, like it had history. Cooper. It still didn't sound right, but Miguel couldn't shake the look in her eyes. That was the look of someone who'd lost something they loved. Or maybe, someone who was trying to hide something even bigger. Benny. He couldn't stop calling him that. Was doing better. He followed Miguel from room to room now. His limp barely noticeable some days. He'd learned how to open the bathroom door with his nose, had claimed a spot on the rug near the window, and barked softly every time someone walked past outside. Miguel found himself talking to him more than usual. Help. Benny didn't judge. He just listened, head tilted, tail tapping the floor now and then. Then, late one evening, the silence cracked again. Miguel was reviewing security camera footage he'd set up after the woman's visit. He'd been cautious, not paranoid, but something about her story didn't sit right. Maybe it was how she'd disappeared so quickly. Maybe it was how no one else had come forward in a city full of missing pet posters. Or maybe it was just instinct. Either way, he hadn't expected what he saw on the footage. Around 2:14 a.m., a shadow passed near the front gate. It wasn't clear, grainy footage, dark lighting, but it was a tall figure, hoodie pulled low, walking slowly along the sidewalk. They didn't come up to the door. Didn't knock. Just stood there, watching. Miguel paused the footage, heart racing. He leaned closer, eyes squinting. Then the figure turned, just slightly, and Miguel saw something glint. Chain. A necklace. He couldn't be sure. But what got to him most was how long they stood there, unmoving. As if waiting for something. The next morning, Miguel took Benny for a walk, careful to stick to crowded sidewalks. He glanced over his shoulder more than once. There was no one behind him, but the feeling didn't leave. That same quiet unease. The sense that eyes might be watching from somewhere just out of view. At the vet's clinic, Dr. Lena greeted him with her usual warm smile, but Miguel didn't waste time. He showed her the footage. "That's unsettling," she said, arms crossed. "Have you reported it?" Miguel shook his head. "What am I going to say? A blurry shadow stood by my gate." She frowned. "Still, if someone's watching your house, that's not nothing. Especially after that woman showed up. Maybe they're connected." Miguel nodded slowly. That thought had crossed his mind too. What if she hadn't come alone that night? What if someone else was tracking Benny? Or her? That night, Miguel locked all the windows and double-checked the back door. Benny seemed tense too, pacing, ears up, nose twitching at every sound. Around midnight, Miguel sat on the couch, TV off, lights dimmed. Benny curled up next to him. The room was quiet except for the occasional sound of cars in the distance. Then the phone buzzed. It was a message. No name. Just a number he didn't recognize. "You don't know what you're holding on to. Let the dog go." Miguel froze. He read it again, pulse quickening. Then, without thinking, he called the number. It rang once, then disconnected. He stared at the screen. Was it a threat? A warning? He showed the message to Dr. Lena the next morning. She read it twice before speaking. "This isn't just about a lost pet, Miguel. Someone wants him hidden, or worse, forgotten." Miguel clenched his jaw. That's not happening. Around the same time, another thread started to unravel. Miguel had posted in a broader missing pet forum, hoping someone might know more about Benny's past. A woman from a nearby town responded. Her name was Rachel, and she said a dog that looked just like Benny had once been part of a small backyard breeding operation that got shut down last year. Miguel's stomach turned. Backyard breeding. Rachel confirmed it. Yeah. Few people got charged. Most of the animals were taken by rescue groups, but not all of them were accounted for. The man who ran it. He vanished before the investigation was complete. Real slippery type. No one's seen him since. She sent Miguel a few photos from an old report. Miguel's heart dropped. One of them, matted fur, frightened eyes, looked a lot like Benny. Same coloring. Same white chest patch. Rachel added one last thing. Some of those animals weren't just bred for sale. There were rumors, darker ones, that he was selling them to the wrong kinds of people. Miguel didn't ask what she meant. He didn't want to know. But deep inside, a new kind of rage was rising. Someone had hurt this dog. Maybe many someones. And now they were trying to keep that buried. Miguel started connecting dots. The woman who showed up at his door. Maybe she had tried to escape with Benny. Maybe she was involved in the past and wanted to make things right. Or maybe she was being watched too. Used even. Whatever the case, one thing was clear now. This wasn't just about one abandoned dog in a cardboard box. It was about a secret. A secret someone didn't want coming back to the surface. Miguel couldn't let it go. He began collecting every thread. Names, locations, old posts, news clippings. He even reached out to an animal rescue volunteer who used to work in the area near the shutdown operation. Her name was Sarah, and when she saw Benny's photo, Her voice went quiet. "I know that dog," she said. "He was called Number 7 back then. He never had a real name. We couldn't get close to him. He was always shaking, wouldn't eat around people. But he was smart. We think he escaped before the raid happened." Miguel felt a chill run down his back. "How would he have ended up here?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. "There's only one person who would have known where to find him. The man who ran that place. If he wanted to make sure the dog disappeared, he could have tracked him down later." Miguel's throat tightened. "You think he's still out there?" "I know he is," she said. "And if he thinks you have something he lost, he won't stop." Miguel looked down at Benny, who was resting by his feet, eyes half closed. A survivor of something no animal should have endured. And now, someone wanted that history erased. But Miguel had already made his decision. He wasn't going to let this go, even if it meant uncovering truths no one wanted to face. Miguel wasn't sleeping much anymore. Not because he couldn't, but because every time he closed his eyes, he saw someone standing at the end of his street. Watching. Waiting. Benny had become restless too. At night, he would stare at the door, ears twitching, growling at nothing. Sometimes he'd whimper in his sleep, like he was trapped in a memory he couldn't escape. The messages hadn't stopped. They became more direct, more chilling. "We know where you live. That dog isn't yours to keep." Miguel started keeping his phone on silent, but the messages still came. He'd contacted the police once, showed them everything, the footage, the threats, the story. But without a name, without a face, there was little they could do. Could be a prank, they said. Could be a misunderstanding. But Miguel knew better. This wasn't a prank. It was a warning. Every new clue brought him closer to something bigger, something hidden. Sarah, the rescue worker, called again. She sounded shaken. "There's something I didn't tell you before," she said. "The guy who ran the operation. His name was Carter Mallon. But he had aliases. He'd disappear, pop up somewhere else, always a step ahead. There were rumors he had people, helpers, lookouts, even cops in his pocket. That's why the case fell apart." Miguel listened quietly, heart pounding. Sarah continued. "If he's looking for the dog, it's not just about one animal. It's about what Benny saw. What he survived." The way she said it made Miguel feel sick. Benny, just a dog, had somehow become a witness to something twisted. And now, someone wanted to make sure that witness never spoke. Not with words, but with presence. With survival. Every scar on Benny's body was a story. Trail. A threat to someone trying to stay in the dark. Miguel started to notice things. A white van parked across from his house more than once. A man with sunglasses lingering too long near the vet's clinic. First he thought it was paranoia. But when he returned home one evening and saw the back gate wide open, he knew it wasn't his imagination. He ran inside, heart in his throat. "Benny!" Silence. "Benny!" Then, from under the table, came a soft whine. Benny was there, shaking. The fur on his neck was standing. Miguel dropped to the floor and hugged him tight. Someone had been inside. He knew it. That night, he didn't sleep at all. He installed more cameras, changed the locks, moved a heavy shelf in front of the back door. And he kept Benny close, never letting him out of his sight. The next day something else came, a package, no return address. It was small, wrapped in plain brown paper. Miguel opened it slowly. Inside was a single dog collar, old, frayed, with a rusted tag that read, "Property of CM." Miguel stared at it, hands shaking. Carter Mallon. There was no doubt now. Dr. Lena urged him to leave town. "Just for a while," she said. "Get out, take the dog, go somewhere safe. Whoever this is, they're not playing around anymore." But Miguel couldn't. Not yet. He needed answers. He needed to know why Benny was being hunted. The next lead came unexpectedly. From the woman who'd once claimed to be Benny's previous owner. She called late in the evening, from another block number. "You were right not to trust me," she said quietly. "But I didn't lie about everything." Miguel didn't say anything. He just listened. she continued. His name was Cooper when I knew him. I was just one of many girls Carter used. He moved us around a lot, made us keep quiet. But the dogs, they were always there, always hurting. Benny. He was the only one who ever got away. Her voice broke. I ran when I could. I left him behind because I was scared. But Carter, he never stopped looking for that dog. Not because he cared, but because he couldn't risk anyone finding out. Miguel's voice was low. Finding out what? There was a long pause. He used the dogs to scare people. Keep girls like me in line. Sometimes worse. If someone talked, the dogs would be the first to pay for it. Benny survived because he was smart. But Carter doesn't let loose ends go. Miguel closed his eyes. The picture was clearer now, and darker than he ever imagined. The woman whispered one last thing. If you care about him, don't wait for Carter to come to you. Then the line went dead. Miguel didn't know what to do anymore. Run. Hide. Fight. He sat in the dark, Benny's head resting on his lap. The dog looked up at him with those tired, trusting eyes. Miguel had promised to protect him. But what did protection look like when the enemy was invisible? He got up and pulled out an old shoebox from the closet. Inside were letters, photos, a small pocket knife from his late father. Miguel hadn't opened it in years. But now, something about it felt grounding. Real. Like a reminder that he came from people who didn't back down. He reached out to Sarah again. What if I find him, he asked. What if I make him answer for what he did? Sarah's voice was calm but cautious. If you do, be ready. Carter doesn't work alone. He's careful. If he knows you're coming, he won't run. He'll come straight for you. Miguel nodded. That was what he was counting on. The next day, Miguel took Benny and drove 2 towns over. He checked into a small motel under a different name. Just until he could plan. Just until he could figure out his next move. He sat at the desk, a map spread out in front of him, red circles marking every old address tied to Carter's name. Warehouses. Rental properties. The site of the shutdown operation. One of them held the truth. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Miguel felt the storm building. He wasn't just protecting a dog anymore. He was stepping into something darker, something layered in secrets and silence. And somewhere out there, Carter Mallon was watching, waiting. The final confrontation was coming. Miguel just didn't know when. The motel room was quiet, but Miguel couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The map on the desk was still there. Same red circles, same hand-scribbled notes. But Benny hadn't touched his food since the night before. He lay in the corner now, head down, watching the door. Miguel checked the cameras he'd set up around the room. Nothing unusual. Still, the silence pressed in like a weight. Then his phone buzzed. No number. No name. Just a video message. Miguel hesitated before hitting play. The screen lit up, shaky footage. Grainy, low light. At first, it was hard to make out what he was looking at. Long hallway. Wooden floors. Then the camera turned, revealing a small, dimly lit room. A chair in the center. And sitting in that chair was Dr. Lena. She looked dazed. Ill. Her arms tied to the rests, her head slumped slightly forward. The camera zoomed in on her face for a second, just enough to see the bruises starting to form, then cut to black. Miguel's chest tightened. The message came with no caption, no demand, just silence. His hands trembled as he stared at the screen, heart pounding. Benny whimpered in the corner. Miguel looked down at him. They got to her. This changed everything. Lena had nothing to do with the past. She had no link to Carter. She was just trying to help. And now, she'd been dragged into the middle of something that was spiraling faster than Miguel could keep up with. He grabbed the keys and the camera drives, tucked Benny under his arm, and bolted from the motel. There was no time to think. Only move. He tried calling Lena's phone, straight to voicemail. Then the clinic, no answer. He considered going to the police again, but he already knew what they'd say. No proof. No location. No immediate danger. But he knew Lena was in danger. And he knew why. Carter wasn't just hunting Benny anymore. He was hunting anyone helping Miguel. Back on the road, Miguel drove to a storage unit he'd been using since moving out of his apartment. Inside were old supplies, tools, files from his contracting work. But there was something else too, a locked black box he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a copy of a notebook his late father used to keep. Miguel remembered it vaguely. His dad used to talk about people who made their own rules. Not the lawless kind, but the kind who protected others when no one else would. He flipped through the pages. One name stood out, Jace Rowan. A friend of his dad's. Used to run with animal rescue teams back in the day. Knew the underground routes. Places people and animals could disappear if they needed to. Miguel made a decision. He called the number scribbled next to Jace's name. A raspy voice answered. Rowan. My name's Miguel. My dad was Elias Rivera. There was a pause. Then, I remember Elias. He was solid. Why are you calling? Miguel didn't hesitate. Because I have a dog that shouldn't be alive. And now people are disappearing. Jace didn't ask questions. He just gave an address and said, be there before nightfall. And keep your eyes open. Miguel drove for hours, only stopping once to fill the tank and let Benny stretch. The dog was quiet but alert, like he knew something was coming too. As they reached the outskirts of an abandoned industrial park, the sky turned gray. The buildings were falling apart, rusted and covered in graffiti. But there was one warehouse that looked different. New locks, clean steps, a small generator humming quietly. Jace met him at the gate. Older, broad shoulders, face like a weathered map. He nodded once. You're the kid with the dog. Miguel nodded. His name's Benny. Jace looked at him, then at Benny. You're lucky he's still with you. Carter doesn't let things slip twice. Inside the warehouse, Jace led him through rows of makeshift kennels, equipment, old rescue posters. We've been tracking Carter on and off for years, he said. He slips through the system, keeps his hands clean. But every so often something leaks. Dog. A girl. A message. Miguel showed him the video of Lena. Jace frowned. He's getting reckless. Or desperate, Miguel added. Jace nodded. That too. See, there's something you probably don't know yet. Carter was never working alone. There's a man who finances him. Quiet. Which. Lives off the grid. His name's Martin Ashcroft. He's the real shadow. Carter just carries out the cleanup. Miguel froze. Why haven't the police? They don't have anything concrete. But we do. Jace pulled out an envelope filled with documents, receipts, photos, names. Ashcroft's estate is where the dogs were taken for final evaluation. Some were adopted. Most weren't. Carter handled the dirty work. Ashcroft made sure no one talked. Miguel stared at the pile of evidence. Why now? Why is Carter so desperate to get Benny back? Jace met his eyes. Because Benny was the only one to escape the estate. The only one who made it out with something. Miguel's blood ran cold. What do you mean, something? Jace picked up a photo from the file. It showed a young girl, maybe 12, maybe 13, holding Benny, years younger, still scarred. She disappeared the same night Benny did. Her name was Mara. She was Ashcroft's niece. She tried to expose what was happening behind closed doors. Benny was the last one seen with her. Miguel sat down, breath caught in his chest. You think she's still alive? I don't know, Jace said. But I do know this. If Benny leads someone back to where she was taken, Ashcroft will burn everything down to keep that secret buried. And Carter. He'll make sure Lena is just the beginning. Miguel looked down at Benny, who was watching him intently, as if sensing the gravity of everything being said. There was something behind his eyes. More than loyalty. There was memory. This wasn't just about saving a dog anymore. It was about justice. About a missing girl. About ending something that had gone on far too long. Jace handed Miguel a photo. grainy surveillance of Carter entering a side building on Ashcroft's estate. He's there now. Preparing something. If you want answers, that's where you go. Miguel nodded, his mind racing, heart pounding. He didn't know what waited for him behind those walls. But he was going. And Benny was going with him. The road to Ashcroft's estate was long and quiet, lined with twisted trees that seemed to lean in as if listening. Miguel had been driving for hours, his hands tight around the steering wheel, his mind racing through every possible outcome. Benny sat in the back seat, silent but alert, his eyes never leaving the side window. It was like he knew where they were going, like he remembered. Jace had given him a burner phone, just in case, and strict instructions to park a mile away and walk in through the eastern woods. No headlights, no noise, and absolutely no second-guessing. Miguel parked beneath a cluster of pines, grabbed the flashlight, and unlatched the back door. Benny jumped down without hesitation. His tail didn't wag. Not this time. He was focused. Every movement, every sniff of the air felt deliberate. Like a soldier returning to the battlefield. They moved through the woods, Miguel stepping carefully over roots and patches of dead leaves. Through the trees, a faint glow appeared, the estate. It was massive. Too quiet. Floodlights lined the perimeter, but only one building was lit from within, a smaller structure away from the main house. That was where Carter had been seen. That was where Lena might be. Miguel crouched behind a fallen log, pulling binoculars from his pack. He scanned the building. No movement, but a black SUV was parked outside. He recognized it from one of the surveillance shots Jace had shown him. Carter was here. He whispered, "Let's go," and Benny stayed at his side, never straying. The door to the building was slightly ajar. Miguel pushed it gently, stepping inside. The smell hit him first. Chemicals, damp wood, and something metallic beneath it all. He moved down a narrow hall, flashlight low, heart pounding in his ears. Benny led the way, stopping at a door at the end. He growled softly. Miguel took a deep breath and pushed it open. There, tied to a chair, was Lena. Her head snapped up at the sound. "Miguel!" He rushed to her, untying the ropes with shaking hands. "Are you okay?" She nodded weakly. "I'm fine. But you have to get out of here. It's a trap." A click echoed behind them. Miguel froze. A shadow stepped into the doorway. Carter. He was older than Miguel expected, but his eyes were sharp, cold, calculating. In his hand was a remote, thumb resting on a switch. "You just couldn't leave it alone," Carter said calmly. "You had to be the hero." Miguel stepped in front of Lena, trying to shield her. "You hurt enough people. This ends now." Carter smiled. "You think bringing that mutt back here solves anything? He's just a dog." "No," Miguel said firmly. "He's the key to everything you tried to bury." Carter laughed once, bitter and low. "You're too late." Behind him, the sound of an engine roared to life. Miguel glanced out the window. A second vehicle pulling up. A man stepped out. Older, dressed in a suit. Confident. Ashcroft. Miguel's chest tightened. He recognized the face from the file Jace had shown him. This was the man behind it all. The money, the silence, the fear. Ashcroft stepped inside. "Mr. Rivera. I assume you've come for answers." Miguel didn't respond. His eyes darted between Carter and Ashcroft, unsure who was the bigger threat. Ashcroft looked down at Benny. "So that's the survivor." Carter tensed. "We should end this now. No more stories. No more chasing ghosts." Ashcroft raised a hand. "Not yet." Then something shifted. Benny snarled, louder than before, his body low to the ground. He lunged, not at Carter, but at a crate in the corner of the room. It crashed open, revealing something Miguel didn't expect. A girl. Barely a teenager, bruised but alive. Hiding. Frozen in fear. "Mara," Ashcroft whispered, his face suddenly pale. Miguel's heart stopped. She was alive. After all this time, She was the reason Benny had escaped. She was the piece Carter and Ashcroft never wanted found. Carter shouted, raising his remote. She was supposed to be gone. Miguel acted on instinct, tackling him to the ground. The remote skidded across the floor. Lena grabbed it and crushed it beneath her foot. Benny stood guard between Mara and Ashcroft, growling deep from his chest. Ashcroft raised his hands. Let's not do anything rash. But the sirens were already in the distance. Jace had sent the location. Miguel looked at Ashcroft. It's over. He's alive. He's alive. And the world is going to hear everything. For the first time, Ashcroft didn't look calm. He looked cornered. The police stormed in minutes later. Carter was dragged out in cuffs, yelling about lies and setups. Ashcroft went quietly, but not before locking eyes with Miguel and saying, "You'll regret this." Miguel didn't respond. He just turned to Mara, who was holding Benny now, her fingers buried in his fur like she was clinging to the only part of the world that still felt safe. But just when it felt like the storm had passed, Lena pulled Miguel aside. "There's something you need to see," she said, handing him her phone. It was a message sent to her clinic a week before she was taken. "If you think this ends with Carter, you haven't been paying attention." There was no name, no traceable source. But Miguel knew. This wasn't just about one man. It was about a system. And somewhere out there someone else was still watching, waiting. But for now Benny was safe. Mara was alive. And Miguel had learned something far more powerful than fear. He had learned that even in the darkest places, one act of kindness could start a ripple that uncovered the truth. And sometimes that ripple starts with a wagging tail. The morning after the arrests, the sky was calm. Soft orange light spilled across the hills as Miguel sat on the front steps of Jace's warehouse, sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee. Benny lay beside him, finally resting, his head on Miguel's foot. The chaos of the past few days still echoed in his mind, but there was also a strange sense of stillness now, like the storm had passed, leaving behind just enough quiet to breathe again. Mara was inside, asleep on a makeshift bed Jace had set up. She hadn't spoken much since they rescued her. She didn't need to. Her presence, her survival said enough. Every so often she would reach for Benny, holding him close like he was the only constant in a world that had flipped upside down. And in a way he was. Benny was the reason everything had come to light. The dog who'd been found in a cardboard box, beaten, broken, and still wagging his tail, had carried the truth with him. And now, finally, people were listening. The news had picked up the story by sunrise. An anonymous tip had leaked documents from Ashcroft's files, records of payments, concealed reports, adoption lists that never led anywhere. It was enough to spark an investigation that reached far beyond the estate. More victims were coming forward. Former workers. Families who'd lost pets under strange circumstances. It was only the beginning, but it was a start. Jace stepped out, a cigarette in hand, and sat beside Miguel. "You did something good here, kid." Miguel shook his head. "We did. You, me, Benny, Mara, everyone." Jace nodded, but his eyes stayed on the horizon. "Ashcroft's lawyers will try everything. He'll spin it. Say it was Carter acting on his own. But the files are strong. People are angry. And now there's a face to the story." Miguel looked over at Benny. "He's not just a face. He's proof." Jace smiled faintly. "And still wagging that tail, even after everything." Later that afternoon, Lena walked into the warehouse, holding a newspaper. The headline read, "Broken but Brave. Dog's Escape Unravels Hidden Operation." Miguel read it quietly, his chest tightening with a mix of pride and sadness. "They're calling him a hero," Lena said. "Everyone is. Donations are pouring into shelters across the state. Rescue groups are stepping up. And I've got 10 voicemails from reporters asking if he can be interviewed on camera." Miguel laughed softly. "He's more of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy." Lena knelt down beside Benny, scratching behind his ear. "He saved her. He saved all of us." There was a knock at the door. Jace opened it to find a woman in her 50s, holding a framed photo. Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. "I think this belongs to someone here," she said gently, handing the frame to Mara. Mara stared at it, hands trembling. It was a picture of her and Benny, years younger before everything. The woman was her aunt, Mara's only surviving family. She'd thought Mara was lost forever. Now they were together again. The embrace between them was quiet, tearful, and full of everything words couldn't say. In the days that followed, things moved fast. Carter and Ashcroft were officially charged. Jace provided evidence, and more witnesses stepped forward. The system that once protected men like them was crumbling, piece by piece. Mara chose to stay with her aunt, at least for now. She needed time, space, and stability. Miguel visited her often. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they'd just sit in silence, Benny curled up between them, like a bridge between two broken pasts. One afternoon, as Miguel helped her unpack boxes in her new room, Mara handed him something. It was a tiny tag, faded, scratched. Benny's original name was on it, Bruno. "I used to call him that," she said. "But I think he likes Benny better now." Miguel nodded. "He's earned it." The final loose end came weeks later. A letter arrived at Lena's clinic, no return address. Inside was a single note. "You made noise. But don't stop. They're not all gone yet." Miguel read it twice, then burned it. He knew what it meant. There were still people out there. Still hands behind curtains. But now they weren't hiding in silence. People were watching, asking questions. And thanks to Benny, they had a reason to believe in the fight. With the media attention growing, Lena started a campaign, Benny's Path, a movement to support and protect abandoned and abused animals, and to expose facilities that operated in secrecy. Shelters across the country joined in. Benny became a symbol, not of pain but of survival, of what hope could look like with a wagging tail and a second chance. Miguel never returned to his old job. He didn't want to. Instead, he started volunteering with Jace, working with dogs like Benny. Ones that came in scared, unsure, broken. Ones that needed time, patience, and someone who understood. Benny remained by his side, always. Some nights, Miguel would sit in the yard with him, watching stars flicker across the sky. He'd think about how it all started. A random sound, a walk behind a grocery store, a torn-up cardboard box. And inside it, a dog who shouldn't have survived, but did. He'd think about how that dog didn't growl, didn't give up, didn't hide. He wagged his tail. Even when it hurt. Even when the world gave him every reason not to. And that changed everything. In the end, it wasn't just a rescue story. It was a story about resilience. About the power of kindness. About how even the smallest act, like stopping to check a box on the street, could be the beginning of something much bigger. It was about a boy and a dog. And a truth that refused to stay buried. And when people asked Miguel what made him stop that night, he always gave the same answer. Because he was still wagging his tail.